to a pork frog that people started doing back in the 70s is they started putting a curly-tailed worm trailer on it like this. And thus the jig and worm combo was invented there. Now, let me talk to you a little bit about the conditions this thing works in and how you want to fish it. This right here is a bait to catch fish around suspended shallow cover. You do not work the jig and worm combo on the bottom. I'm not saying you can't catch one on it, but the jig and worm combo, for whatever reason, it works great on bass that are suspended around shallow cover. Now, what I'm talking about here, shallow cover, let's say, for example, less than 10 feet is when I refer to shallow. Let's say, for example, you have a lake that has some lay down trees in it or standing timber or anything like that. If you have a lay down tree, say, for example, that's on a steep bank, and maybe the tree is like 20 or 30 foot long and it goes out into the lake, and the water is real deep on the end of that tree. Say the water is 10 or 15 feet deep. A lot of times in those scenarios, bass will suspend around those limbs of the trees, 2 or 3 feet underneath the water. And the same if you have like standing or submergent timber in less than 10 foot of water. A lot of times those bass, they won't be on the bottom, but they'll be suspended high in the water column, just a couple feet under the surface. And guys, you can take the jig and worm combo and just, cast it past the target and just reel it, just a steady retrieve, keeping your rod tip high. You're trying to get that bait down there in that 2 to 3, maybe 4 foot zone, maybe less if the water's a little bit dirtier. And guys, those big ones will hammer this. I've caught a lot of 4 and 5 pound bass swimming the jig and worm combo around that shallow water. Now, one of the things that you have to have for this to work is some stained water. And when you have stained water, it makes those bass suspend a lot shallower on the wood. So the sort of like the rule of thumb I go by, if the water visibility is around a foot or so, a lot of times those fish will be suspended just under the surface, like a foot under the surface around the cover. If the water visibility is like 1.5 to 2 foot, maybe they're suspended 2 or 3 foot down, so that sort of gives you a gauge to go by the depth with it. And on top of that, it's a warm weather technique. This is something that works when the water temperatures are over 70 degrees. So if you've got a combination of 70-degree water that's stained, and I actually prefer water temperature close to 80, and shallow cover, one of the things that you can try that a lot of people don't do, instead of like if you come up to a piece of wood or something, don't just pitch your creature bait or your jig into there and work it like on the bottom. Take the jig and worm combo and just throw it out there like you would a spinner bait or a chatter bait, and basically that's what it is. It's like a subtle horizontal reaction bait. Another good place that works good is around boat docks.